Cartethyia has been out for a few days, and let me tell you, she is one of the greatest DPS I've ever used. Which got me wondering, how are the meta now in Wuthering Waves and what are the strongest teams, right? Which is why in today's video, we'll be taking a look at how Pritwood listed their tier list, and just to take a look at how the meta has changed so far. Let me know in the comment section down below whether or not you agree or disagree. And as usual, I'm hoping this to just be a civil discussion. And let's just have some fun with it. Remember as well, every character is good in their own right if you put them in a solid team. And it's more skill based anyway. Plus, just because the character is not the top tier does not mean they cannot 3-star all the endgame modes. So with all that said, let's just jump right in. The first thing to take note of would be definitely tier 0 with the new addition of Cartethyia. Now, based on my own research as well, on the right team and the right playstyle, Cartethyia is the character with the strongest and the greatest damage per second output character, right? And based on the change log from Pritwood, they are agreeing as well that Cartethyia is the best DPS in the game if she is under the right condition. Now, to talk about the greatest team for Cartethyia is certainly Arrow Rover, Chakota, and Cartethyia herself, and that team works like a charm. It really does do explosive and consistently explosive damage at that. Especially the moment Cartethyia gets on field and uses the ultimate, it's like just the end for the wave, or for any enemies in general. By the way, I forgot to mention, this video will be mainly about TOA, and we'll look at Wuthering Waves a little bit after this. In any case, just as I mentioned in the guide, the team is very simple to use, and the benefits to reap are pretty good. It's honestly the classical healer into a buffer, or in this case, a support buffer that could also debuff in terms of arrow erosion, into a damage dealer that utilizes the negative effects, for instance, arrow erosion, to do a lot of damage. This is similar to Zaddy, and Zaddy has been one of the greatest DPS as well in the game. As seen from tier 0 right here, we got, in my opinion, the new big three is Carlota, Zaddy, and Cartethyia. I definitely agree these three teams are really strong in terms of their damage output when placed in the right conditions using the right teams. So no wonder they are in tier 0. However, it is important to take note as well, Pritwood has listed this tier list with partner in mind. Now, partner basically means in the right team they're this tier, but if you don't have the right partner, it's harder for them to be at this tier. Now, they did not give this exact term to Cartethyia, which is quite surprising because a lot of people are mentioning without Chakota, Cartethia's ability are a lot less prominent, which it is true, but the ceiling is quite high, right? If you really master all the swap cancels or the animation cancels and really make sure your team is mid-packs, you can actually pull out really good damage with Cartethyia even without a Chakota on the team. One of the teams without Chakota that's pretty good being Shorekeeper, Arrow Rover, and Chakota. Using that team well though requires really good skill in my opinion, but hey, that is also fun, right? That means, you know, skill matters and some, and I know a lot of WoW players don't mind that for sure. With that said, these three are in tier 0. I think it's quite agreeable. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Moving on, this, we got tier 0 for the hybrid role, and honestly, it's pretty obvious that, oh, since Cartethyia is tier 0, you got the partner for Cartethyia. We got Chakota as the hybrid supporter, right? Nothing much to say. It's the best team with potentially the highest damage output, therefore is one of the best characters in the game. Definitely deserves a tier 0 for Chakota. Same with Phoebe for Zaddy, right? Spectral Frazzle team. Very similar idea in terms of how they function for both of these teams, which is why you're gonna see Phoebe here. And yeah, I myself still use the Phoebe Zaddy team, and it works like a charm. I love it a lot. And just as the case of the tier 0 DPS being Carlota as well, you got Jeji, which is a staple hybrid for that team, being tier 0, which is fair enough as well. I am surprised Sanhua is like matching the rest here. I know Sanhua's pretty good, but damn, matching the rest of this. I feel like she's certainly at a lower level of the same tier that I can get behind. But yeah, hey, Sanhua's still a really strong character. That is pretty much the only other character you can use if you don't own the premium support hybrid character here. Like for instance, especially Carlota, you don't have Jeji, well, Sanhua's your best bet, right? A lot of teams are like that. Oh, you don't got the perfect one, Sanhua's your best bet. So fair enough. Insane to see how strong Sanhua is still today. Like the power creep for her does not exist. And they give this character for free. Like, can you believe that? Next off in tier 0, we got the supports. Same thing. And honestly, I feel like it's due time for something else till like be introduced, right? For how much longer will these two be dominating? Not that I want to see them go down, but I would love to see, you know, fresh new faces, right? But for now, it's classical for WoW. Every team usually just have one or the other. It's either Shorekeeper or Arena as one of the slot, with the only exception being Arrow Rover for the Chakota Cartethyia team, which I'll also mention as well. With Arrow Rover, I would put him or her on this slot as well if it's in the Chakota Cartethyia team, right? But otherwise, Arrow certainly falls off in terms of usability, if not in the arrow erosion team. Well, speaking of these two, perfect, right? Like, of course, they're just too good. And you can get one of them for free. Like, what was insane? Moving on, we have tier 0.5. These are the few that I'm a bit surprised by, right? While I'm initially surprised to see Jinxie and, you know, Carlota finally dropping out of tier 0, I'm also surprised to see freaking Phoebe is that good as a main damage dealer. I've used her as a main damage dealer. I know she has decent damage, but damn. Tier 0.5 here. Quite surprising to me that she can match even, say, Jinxie, right? I personally have never played her to the point where she can match my Jinxie, but maybe it's about skill ceiling, or maybe she's at a lower of the same tier. I'm not exactly sure. Let me know what you think. But for me, the biggest news here is Jinxie falling off of the top tier, which since she's been dominating for a long time, I feel like it is due time for her to not be dominating the game, right? Now, based on what Pridwins are saying, based on their calculations, Jinxie has already been thrown by Carlota, number 1, and the newly buffed Phoebe as well, for number 2. So they're saying the newly buffed Phoebe does more damage than Jinxie. Now, I haven't calculated all that, right? I'm not like a math guy, but if that is true, then fair enough. Jinxie being at 0.5 makes sense. However, I'm not sure how true that is for sure, right? But they also have the Expert +1 title, which means if players are able to use her very well with animation canceling, swap canceling, and everything, she can actually outperform 0.5 and get into tier 0. But then this tier list is catered more towards realistically, you know, achievable state for most players, right? For me, I play the normal combo, the normal rotation, no like too complicated of swap canceling, this and that. So this does make sense. However, remember, right? This doesn't mean she's unusable now. She's still very usable, and you can clear anything with Jinxie still, I believe. Even without too complicated of controls, just do the normal rotation, and if you have a Jinxie that's well built, she can still put up numbers, and you should be able to clear TOA without any issues. And that's the exact same case for Camilla. I assume if they put Camilla here means after calculations, her damage quite simply does not go ahead of the newer version characters, right? For me, I still literally use Camilla anywhere, considering if you're just hovering here, 0.5 in TOA, tier 0 in Whimper Waste, she's the queen of everything. You can use her anywhere, and she just dominates still. Maybe not as good as like Zanny could in TOA, but still Whimper Waste, she can just spin and clear the whole wave, right? That's still very good. And I'm very, very surprised to see Phoebe being this good. Tier 0.5 everywhere. I do use her everywhere myself as well. But as a main DPS to be tier 0.5 even in DOA is quite impressive. If the calculations with Phoebe are true, right, and she can actually outperform even Jinxie for damage in DOA, then yeah, this does make sense. But before we move on, Indians still remember, yeah, they're tier 0.5, but that still makes them Apex characters, right? It's listed right here. So they're all still really strong. And I'll just say it as well. I don't think there's that much of a difference in damage output between all of these characters. Even if it is, the threshold that you need to beat content shouldn't be anywhere near that high, right? Like if they're calculating based on, oh, once you min-max everything, technically you can do this much damage. Well, the enemy's already dead, right? So fair enough, but at least this means Wuwa is actually moving on from like the older meta now. They're releasing newer characters and they are layering themselves as one tier above is what I'm seeing here, which is fair enough, right? So it's a year-old game. I've seen way worse power creep before. Let me tell you something right now. Apex character tier 0.5. We got hybrid. We have more Teffy. I think it's only for like 1 or 2 specific teams as well, right? Now, I am surprised to see, especially for the GN team, he is certainly the best. But I would say, yeah, he's definitely not at tier 0 for sure, right? I wouldn't even be too surprised if he's moved down a tier as well. Like, he's just around this range, right? Tier 0.5 or tier 1. I personally would put him tier 1, though. It's either that or at least I'll put Brant up here as well at tier 0.5. But in any case, let's just move on to the meta characters. And here's something I like what Pridwin has done. They have started to have 2 of the same characters, but you know, in different roles, right? Which is true. You can build a lot of characters a lot of different ways, use them a lot of different ways as well. So separating them like this does make sense. And to take a look at tier 1, we got Brant, Chakota, and then the rest of the usual characters in this tier, right? To take a look at Chakota as a main DPS, yeah, she can actually be built as that. And the results of that is not gonna like beat the main like hardcore DPSs in my opinion. So yeah, it's apparent that she would be in this tier as a main DPS. Though I pretty much know no one that plays her as a main DPS. More of them play her with freaking Cartethyia for sure, right? But if you do run her main DPS, well, expect her to actually still be good, which is pretty surprising to me. We also have Brant as the main DPS. With the introduction of Lupa coming soon as well, Brant is pretty much the only like higher damage output character for the fusion element. And even then, it's still just tier 1, right? As I mentioned, with fusion teams, they don't really have a set in stone. This person is a main damage dealer, which could be introducing Lupa as like a sub damage dealer that buffs every other sub DPS that also buffs each other. That's fun as shit, right? It's like add 3 tier 1 level characters together, you get a tier 0 performance. That would be so fun, but hey, we don't know how that's gonna like work out yet. But for now, Brant is not out damaging like the meta characters for sure. He is still very solid though in the best fusion team we have. It'll be something like Shorekeeper into Chonli into Brant. And for the rest of the characters, it's pretty much the usual same characters that's always been in around tier 1 or tier 1.5. And yeah, I would say it's not that surprising. They're certainly not at the meta peak character level, right? And in the end, GN being the first banner, just seeing you in tier 1 still considered meta. Very, very solid stuff, right? To move on to the hybrids now. This one to start, I definitely understand that, oh, Rachia, why is she not higher? It's because Tower Versity, usually you fight one big boss, and Rachia has a whole gathering mechanic that basically has no use. Understandable, so I'll put her here. Makes sense. With Chun-Li, though, you have Expert +2. This is insane to me. Expert +2, meaning you can go 2 tiers above if you're good with her. I want to master her so badly, right? That might be a video idea. But yeah, with Chun-Li, I think I made a similar idea of a video where I'm using GN with Jinsei. That team has really high potential as well, but the amount of like canceling, animation cancel, swap cancels you have to do is so unbelievably hard, right? It's unrealistic to pull very consistently, although I know there are monstrous players that could do that. But yeah, with Chun-Li, if you do the normal combo, the problem is you're wasting a lot of potentially savable animation, cancelable animation, and just, you know, integratable combos with other characters. There's a lot of openings in Chun-Li's kit that allows you to do that, right? Which is why if you really want to animation cancel every time, cancel this, cancel that every time, you can actually have her be very, very good. Like maybe 50% better than how she is now, right? Compared to another damage healer, and you can like integrate both together and cancel each other out. Like for instance, Chun-Li and Jinsei as a team. That is a legitimate team that has very good ceiling, but it's just so hard to pull off consistently, right? Which I think for hardcore players, this is such a blessing. If you want to really master Wuwa, go main Chun-Li. I love that there's a character like this, right? But for the general public though, she's considered a bit slower and clunky. So yeah, tier 1 seems fair enough. And then we have Brandt as well. And I suppose the reason why you wouldn't put him tier 0.5 is because he doesn't have the main DPS slot that he really supports well. Because there's just no fusion main DPS that's like really dominating. So for that reason, I would say fair enough. But then for that reason, I would also move Mortefi down over, right? Because it's not like Mortefi's supporting like the top characters perfectly for sure. But let me know if I'm missing anything. Discuss as civil people if possible. And let's just move on. Support. We see Arrow Rover being a new addition, and he's tier 1. For me, this is like, you know, if you have a partner and then you play him well, I think he's just tier 0, right? Like in the Cartethyia team as one of the best teams in the game. But then otherwise, you pretty much would not really want to use that. So fair enough to put him here. Not much else to say, right? It's a character that's designed for that team to be the best in that team and otherwise not that great. Fair enough to put him here as a meta character, I suppose, right? And then you have the Spectrofrazzle was the same thing. You know, you only really use this in a Spectrofrazzle based team. Otherwise, you don't really use it, right? So fair enough, I suppose, right? And to just move on to tier 1.5, we have the Expert +1 Danjin. This person's really hard to use, and yeah, Expert with her gets to the tier 1. Honestly, fair enough as a main DPS, right? She's always at low health. It's hard to use, but if you can use her, you're good at it. And tier 1 as a result for a purple character, bro, that is already good enough. For hybrids, again, the only one worth mentioning, I would say, is a lowering of Yinlin and a lowering of Cantarella. I haven't used Cantarella too much. I couldn't get her, which I'm surprised at. Wow, a limited character of recent time dropping to 1.5. I've heard as well this character is like designed for the future too, so I would say give her more time. Her main shtick's to buff like havoc damage, right? Which we already have characters that could do that, so you don't necessarily need Cantarella for that. So for now, it seems you don't have to get her, or maybe in the future there might be a character that can fully utilize her kit as well, right? But as I mentioned, I don't have her. I haven't really tested her fully, so I can't really comment too much. Let me know if you own Cantarella, if she deserves this tier though. It's quite surprising to see a limited character drop to 1.5. Yeah, speaking of limited characters, we have Yinlin, which is the second better of all time. This one I can at least understand, right? It's an older character comparatively, and fair enough. With more and more characters introduced that can do coordinated attacks like Jeji, like even Verena herself, they can still do that, helping Jinsei. I personally seen a lot less use for Yinlin. There's a lot less reason to. But would you put her at 1.5 or would you have her stay at tier 1 though? That's up for debate, right? And based on the changelog they're mentioning, the reason why Yinlin's not at the same level is because there's other DPS that's just better than the main team that Yinlin supports. Plus, she also is pretty reliant on the signature weapon, which I would say isn't really that big of a factor in like ranking characters, right? But understandably, they're mentioning Yinlin is seeing less and less use. Plus, they also added Chun-Li at expert level is just a better option, which while I agree, but for the general public as well, I think a very minuscule percentage of people can play Chun-Li correctly. But I do understand the fact that there's less and less reason to use Yinlin, which is why she's here at tier 1.5, at least based on what Pritman is saying. But I would say, you know what, I could still put her tier 1, maybe a lower tier 1, right? But you know, honest to God, God, based on my own experience, I'm not using Yinlin like that much at all. And I never really found a reason to as well, right? And I never really had a, burning reason to use Yinlin, especially when you can just, slam the top Apex characters, right? Let me know what you think. I can get behind putting her here or maybe move her up one tier. But in any case, let's just move on to the supports. We got Baiji, the only, actually free character that you can get that can replace Verena. But as usual as well, there's less and less reason to use her. The meta has grown to the point where, you have Arrow Rover now as the healer. It's not just Verena, Shorekeeper, or Baiji, right? So putting her down a slot makes sense. I would say it's fine. And then you have the niche characters. These are the characters that are not that great, which it's pretty much similar characters, right? And I'm surprised to see Calcharo has an expert +2. Damn, that's a video idea, right? I gotta see what expert top tier it looks like. But even at +2, you're at tier 1. So for the toughness and difficulty of playing you, for a tier 1 performance, I don't know if a lot of people want to hardcore practice this. But for a Calcharo main, yeah, just know that he can still be pretty good if you're good at him. So yeah, that will be all for the list based on print win for TOA. And just take a, scroll through Whimpering Waste as well before we wrap up to take a look at the main points, right? We got tier 0.5 for Cartethyia, which comparatively Cartethyia has less AoE capabilities as compared to say, Camilla or GN, right? But then again, I still think you can clear everything easily with Cartethyia. Yeah, you're not hitting the whole map, but you're hitting one row of the whole map, so you're still hitting a lot. Sanhua got an increase. God damn, why is Sanhua just dominating anywhere? Well, given as well, one of her selling points is fast rotation, fast cycling for a team. Pretty good for Whimpering Waste, where there's a lot of waves coming in, and you rather than give your time to set up your sub DPS, it's better to just, okay, sub DPS in, out, my main DPS goes, I want to do damage, clear the way. For that short time, that's fair. And yeah, of course, for Chia, the whole gathering thing, not great at TOA, insane in Whimpering Waste. And for the rest of it, there's nothing too much to be surprised by, maybe except for the Arrow Rover one. I'll put her up a tier, because in the best team, he can still be really good helping Cartethyia, right? But I suppose in the end, in an AoE scenario, Arrow Rover certainly has less of an advantage. And Jinxi's tier 1.5, but expert +2, right? That's why I'm a bit surprised by, but if you're good at Jinxi though, she can still clear everything very well. And yeah, I would say for the rest of it, it's pretty similar to what TOA has explained. And that is all for the updated tier list for Wuthering Waves. It's been a while since I took a look. I've also watched no other content, right? This is just purely my opinion, and I'm hoping to just share my opinion and discuss with y'all. Let me know what you think with this list. Is it accurate? For me, I would say, since I haven't done the actual calculations, I can't exactly say how accurate things are, right? But I am surprised to see, especially someone like Phoebe apparently doing better than Jinxi. But if the calculations are true, then of course, this would make it a pretty accurate representation of the meta, where we have the new big 3 teams now. Before, it's always Camilla, Jinxi, +1 that could be, Xianglia or GN, right? But that's for a far long time ago, though. Now it's Carlota, Cartethyia, Zanny, and 2 of them have the negative effect base kit, which I think is just a new, wave for Wuthering Waves, quite obviously. We're gonna see more and more of this effects come in, right? For every element as well. So for the next characters that they've already showcased, we got what, Augustus, I think. Yeah, that one's hype. I think we can expect a lot of them to have these negative base effects. That's pretty exciting for me, and I think it's a good direction for the game, right? I'm also really hoping Lupa is just the type that buffs your entire team, buffs your next character buffs the next character, the next character buffs Lupa back, and everyone does damage. That's so fun in my opinion. I want to see that happen, right? So with that said, let me know what you think, and remember, this is just an opinion. If it's a wrong opinion, discuss civilly, and that would be my one favor to ask of you. Let me know if you agree, and that will be all for today. Take care.